And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. It's been a while since we've been back on the air together. Of course, I had to take last Friday off, and we went to the homecoming of the 115th Field Artillery Brigade in Cheyenne. That was a pretty good time. They've been deployed to Jordan for the last year. And they had kind of a cool ceremony, a couple of big fire trucks. The governor was there as well as Representative Hageman. So it was a good time. And welcome home to all those Wyoming National Guard members. After a little bit later on in the program, I've got something special to show you. The unit that was stationed over there did something very special for Cowboy State Politics, and I can't wait to show it to you. It's always fun when I get to add something new to the studio, and so I'll be showing that to you here, before too long, probably, I don't know, maybe after the second break, after the first break, but we'll get to it. It's pretty cool, and I can't wait to show it to you. Headlines this morning. Well, I guess first I should probably tell you where Ken is. Ken is off on numerous committee meetings, and so we're back in the original Cowboy State Politics studio for a while. But never fear, the program and the show will go on. Headlines this morning. Of course, Pete Hegseth delivered a speech this morning to all of the generals and admirals in the U.S. military. I watched most of it while I was doing show prep this morning, and you can sum it all up to basically saying the military is going to get back to doing military stuff. Enough of this DEI bullcrap, men in dresses and people who get promoted for reasons that don't necessarily pan out or because that have nothing to do with being in the military or fighting a war, that everything is going to be based on merit. And one of the things that I particularly liked about his speech, it was, and I guess the best way to describe it is to say that, all right, he may have hurt some people's feelings, but we're not in the military to validate somebody's feelings or to do any of that stuff. It's the people join the military to fight and win wars and to serve our country. And that's basically what the speech amounted to. But at one point, he said, we're going to get back to standards. And, if you can't pass the standards, then you don't need to be in the military. As you can tell, I've got the studio dog with me this morning. Her name is Maisie, anyway. But anyway, Pete Hegseth, he went on and on about military standards. And think about this, right? If you can't pass a physical fitness test, then you probably don't need to be in the military. If for whatever reason you need some sort of accommodation, well then, there's no reason for you to be in there. I mean, we have standards for a reason, and that is so that we can be the leanest, meanest fighting machine on the face of the earth, and that there's no parallel. And under the Biden administration, we got away from a lot of that, pretty much all of it. And promotions were given out because somebody was black or green or purple or, or had purple hair or believed that they were a woman when they were actually a man. And none of it had to do with merit. None of it had to do with being in the military. It was all about all of this DEI inclusion crap that we have to meet quota numbers in the military, which what that caused is a precipitous decline in recruiting numbers. Because, I mean, if you're the guy that is going to join the military and wants to defend our country, do you really want to be serving with somebody who got the job merely because of the color of their skin or because of their gender? Nobody really wants that, and that's why you saw recruiting numbers go down significantly. Well, we're done with that. Right now, President Trump is addressing that same group of generals and admirals and all the top brass in the military. And probably on tomorrow's show, I'll have some sound bites from both of their speeches. But, the media, I saw a lot of criticism about this. Well, it's the first time that this has ever happened. That why would they have all of our military leaders in one place? And there are all sorts of conspiracy theories abounded. And really, this was just a meeting to say, this is the way it's going to be. If you don't like it, there's the door. Don't let it hit you on your way out. And, I think that that's a reaction to the hyper-partisanship that is, and maybe partisanship isn't the right word, but everything is political now. And we have to criticize everything that President Trump does and everything he says. And so if there's a meeting of the top military brass, well, obviously it's sinister. Maybe he's calling in an airstrike or something on the building. I mean, it's just stupid. Let's get back to reality, my friends, and start worrying about running our country and not winning political points or getting clickbait or getting clicks on your posts or whatever. There's also some news from Wyoming. This one made me laugh because I've been on this story since it happened. The Weston County Clerk, Becky Hadlock, was subpoenaed by the legislature to show up and explain what the heck was going on with the Weston County election. And if you don't remember or need a little refresher, in that election, there were 2,000 undervotes in the state, in that legislative district, which meant that Speaker of the House, Chip Nyman, who is overwhelmingly popular in that part of the state, had 2,000 people that just didn't vote. Well, none of that really holds any water. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And so that election was questioned, starting with the Newsletter Journal in Newcastle. And, at the very beginning of it, Becky Hadlock, she dug in her heels and she attributed all of the undervotes to, quote, a protest vote of Representative Nyman, which that didn't really make any sense anyway. But that's how it started out. And so the night of the election, Secretary Gray called her at like midnight and started asking what is up with all these election results. And, he tried to anyway. Becky Hadlock didn't answer the phone. Secretary Gray had to send the sheriff to go get her out of bed and find out what was going on with the election. And in the end, it turned out that Becky Hadlock had some ballots that were misprinted. And this is just the story that I recall. I may be getting some details wrong, but essentially there were misprinted ballots, and that those got used in the election. And there was questions about the testing of the ES&S tabulation machines. And so basically what happened is there wasn't anything printed on the ballot where the machine was told to read it. And so it just recorded an undervote because there wasn't any mark there. And Becky, and the same thing happened with their county commissioner's race too. So during that investigation, I called Becky Hadlock and interviewed her a little bit about this whole situation. Here is what Ms. Hadlock had to say when I called her. The Weston County Clerk?
Uh-huh.
Hi, my name is David with Cowboy State Politics. I was wondering if you had a couple minutes to visit about your election results.
Sure.
When did you first notice that there was a problem with the House District 1 race?
Secretary Gray called me the night of the election.
Okay, so you didn't see. Okay, so that is really important, and you got to remember the timeline, because this is the second phone interview that she gave. The first time she talked with a reporter from the Newsletter Journal, and think of now. Just listen to the question I asked her. When did you notice there was a problem? And she says she didn't know there was a problem until Secretary Gray called her on the phone. Which, again, she didn't answer the phone. The sheriff had to go get her out of bed. But let's go ahead and continue. When the results came in, you didn't see a problem with them at all, or?
I didn't, because there were several races that had a lot of undervotes.
Okay, so you're referring to the county commissioner race.
The commissioner and also the school board.
Okay, so what is in other elections, what's the normal amount? Hold on. So the county clerk, they're the person that's in charge of the election in your county. And you would think that they would have a pretty good bead on how the election's going to go. And when there are irregularities across several different elections, Becky Hadlock didn't even, what she told me anyway, was that she didn't even see that as a problem. No, there's no problem here because there's a lot of undervotes everywhere else. Keep in mind, though, that the number was significantly higher than it had been in previous years. Like I said, in House District 1, there was around 2,000 undervotes. So, Becky Hadlock didn't even question that maybe there was a problem with the election. Let's continue. Over undervotes that you would see in a Weston County election.
Oh, I don't want to comment on that because I'd have to go back in my other elections to find that.
Okay. All right. So when is your
it's normal for people to undervote?
When is your canvassing board going to meet?
Tentatively.
All right, hold on. First of all, it is not normal for people to undervote. Usually when you go in to vote, or at least in my experience and with just about everybody that I know, you don't really leave a circle blank. And even if you do, it's not a majority of people. Most people, when they go in to vote, they make sure that in every election there's a circle filled out, even if they don't really like the candidates. They just try to pick the worst of the best out of the worst. But most people fill out a selection in every race. It is not normal for folks to undervote unless there's some sort of significant problem. Somebody dropped out, or and maybe that was their candidate. But even then, we're not talking about the majority. But according to Becky Hadlock, well, yeah, that's pretty normal in Weston County for there to be 2,000 undervotes. All right, let's continue. Friday
at 2.
Okay, so it's is that the normal time? Because I know here in Sheridan County they're going to meet today, but is that normally when they meet?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So do you expect to certify the results, or are you going to do an investigation into why there were over 2,000 undervotes?
We will certify the results, the correct results. Yes, we won't certify unless we have the correct results.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Now, last question. When did you complete the testing on the ES&S machines?
We did 2 tests. We did a test. I'd have to look back. And I'm right in the middle of getting ready for my commissioner meeting. I'm sorry.
No, I get it. I got this story last night, and I thought, why not talk to the person in charge? So I thought I'd give you a call.
Yes. Yes, but we will definitely not certify until we have the correct results.
Okay, great.
Unlike what's being floated around.
Well, there you have it. A couple of problems there is she gave me some different answers than she told the Newsletter Journal, the hometown newspaper in Newcastle. And she didn't mention that the Wyoming Secretary of State had to call the Weston County Sheriff to come get her out of bed so that she... By the way, this is from a podcast I did right around the time this whole thing was happening during the last election. And just a second here, and I'll tell you exactly which podcast that was. But it was it was a huge problem. In fact, Secretary Gray, they had to do a recount of those elections. And this was a big deal. And Becky Hadlock pretty much was being just obstinate about it. She didn't do anything wrong. There's no reason to question her, as it turns out, and I'll get into the piece in the Cowboy here in just a second. But as it turns out, there was. some reasons to question that election. Now, that whole podcast is called Weston County Election Mess, and it was published on November 9th of last year. And in it, you'll hear this soundbite, which I'm going to play the rest of this for you in just a second, but you'll hear this soundbite and a larger explanation of what happened. The point here is you should be getting the idea that, maybe there was some things that were going on with that election, and the county clerk there probably should have had a good bead on what was happening and didn't, or at the worst, knew what was happening and was just trying to do a little CYA. I think that's more probable than anything else. But here's the rest of that soundbite. And in this next piece is a quick interview between the Newsletter Journal, that's the Newcastle paper, and Becky Hadlock. And notice that she says some things that are different than what she told me. She would answer the phone and talk to the Secretary of State's office the night of the election. Here is what the Weston County Clerk, Becky Hadlock, told the Newsletter Journal in an impromptu interview Wednesday morning after the election.
Becky, can I ask you a couple questions about the election? Sure. Is the House District 1 race count accurate?
ES&S is working on that.
Who is?
ES&S.
ES&S. Are any other races compromised?
No.
Who's on the canvassing board?
The canvassing board is Doug Dory and William Fuller.
And William?
Fuller?
Just two of them?
That's all that's required.
And when will they meet?
I'm not sure yet.
You don't have a date, time, or place?
No, I don't.
Okay. So, can you call us when you have that? Or,
I can try, yeah.
or email me?
Yeah, I can let you know.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other races compromised? Becky Hadlock says no. What she told me on the phone is that she didn't really see a problem with the election results because other races had a whole bunch of undervotes in. Okay, all right. So you get the point that there's a whole bunch of stuff that Becky Hadlock isn't talking about because, and this is just my opinion, she's engaged in a massive amount of CYA. Because her name has already been submitted to the governor, who, by the way, didn't do anything about this. Governor Gordon never does anything. I mean, he doesn't want to hold anybody accountable. Well, there's this piece in the Cowboy, and I think this was published later yesterday, and it's entitled Weston County Clerk No-Shows Subpoena from the Committee Investigating Her. The Weston County Clerk, quoting now, accused of botching portions of the 2024 election in Northeast Wyoming and filing a false post-election audit, did not show up Monday for a legislative subcommittee meeting for which she was subpoenaed. Now, again, I think this is a little bit unprecedented as far as I know, but there are several people for several different reasons who have been subpoenaed by legislative committees because, I mean, it is the job of the legislature to conduct oversight of all of the counties. They are political subdivisions of the state after all. And I mean, it is one of the jobs of the legislature to maintain oversight. And sometimes the only way you can do that is if you get people to show up. And obviously, Becky Hadlock was not going to show up voluntarily. The county clerk, accused of botching portions of the 2024 election in Northeast Wyoming and filing a false post-election audit, did not show up Monday for a legislative subcommittee meeting for which she was subpoenaed. Weston County Clerk Becky Hadlock could face up to $100 in fines and up to 6 months in jail for not complying with a subpoena if a prosecutor takes up a case against her for failure to appear for the subpoena. And that's partially, if I had to guess, I would say that's what Becky Hadlock is banking on, that no prosecutor is going to pick up the case because, hey, the governor didn't have her removed either, so why should she think that she had to show up? The subcommittee is planning a virtual work session Monday to develop solutions to possible gaps in election and public accountability laws. Hadlock has been under statewide public scrutiny since the general election last November. She allowed faulty ballots into the election, the machines read them wrong, and then incorrectly concluded that more than 1,200 people chose not to vote for House Speaker Chip Nyman, according to committee testimony. She told others that the 90% undervote was a protest vote against Representative Nyman. Newsletter Journal employee Walter Sprague, Gray, and Nyman told the committee on Monday. The ballot mix-up wasn't the worst part or the key issue, Secretary of State Chuck Gray said repeatedly. The fulcrum, according to Gray, is that Hadlock apparently missed, skewed, ignored, or lied about 21 ballot errors during her post-election audit. The post-election ballot audit she sent to Gray's office said there were not errors in the sample of 75 ballots she reviewed. In his view, there are only two explanations. Either she filed a fraudulent audit or she didn't conduct one at all, said Gray. Now, when it was time for Becky Hadlock to appear, chairman of the committee, Rachel Rodriguez Williams, asked her to step forward, paused, and of course there was no answer because Becky Hadlock wasn't there. And so they just continued on. A staffer with the Legislative Service Office contacted Hadlock September 8th to ask her availability to testify in person or remotely, according to a letter from Hadlock, which subcommittee chair Rachel Rodriguez Williams provided Monday to the Cowboy. She said she had a scheduling conflict. Two LSO staffers on September 9th asked Hadlock if members of the county's hand counting committee could testify. Two could, election judges Deb Piana and Ann Slagle, says the letter. Still, says Hadlock's letter, she received the subpoena September 23rd, which Management Audit Committee Chair Representative Chris Knapp had signed. Quote, I am writing you this letter to directly confirm that I will not be attending the hearing, but have arranged two perfectly qualified individuals to attend instead, wrote Hadlock. Rodriguez Williams called for Hadlock about 10:30 Monday, just in case. Ms. Hadlock, please come forward, she said. A pause followed, and no one came forward. The committee took a break, after which Rachel Rodriguez Williams announced, quote, the proper authorities will be notified that a violation of the subpoena has been made, and we will run through the process from this point on. Piana and Slagle both testified that they didn't realize they were expected to testify in Hadlock's place, though both were willing to do that generally. Now, again, this is pretty unusual. I haven't heard of, until this year, I haven't heard of anybody else being subpoenaed by a legislative committee. But there's a question of who prosecutes this whole business when somebody just ignores a subpoena. Is it the jurisdiction in which the crime occurred? That is Natrona County, because they held this meeting in Casper. Or is it the district court in Weston County, or the one that oversees Weston County? There's a lot of questions, and some of those have to be ironed out. The Cowboy goes into great detail talking about it. And here's the problem. Why should anybody in Weston County trust Becky Hadlock or their elections? Because there's been so much, so many things were goofed up. Like I said, there were incorrectly printed ballots. Those ballots were then shuffled in amongst some other ballots that were correctly printed. The machines weren't exactly tested because they were reading the ballot incorrectly, and had Becky Hadlock tested them, she would have known that there was a problem, but she didn't. And then the election happened. Afterwards, she reports that there was no errors in the election. Exactly. So, I mean, it is just mistake, cover up, mistake, cover up, mistake, cover up. And I'm using the word mistake because I don't think that Becky Hadlock intentionally set out to screw up the election. I think she did so via negligence, and now she's engaged in a pretty good cover-up. Now, there is one piece of this whole thing from the governor that I don't know why the Cowboy included it in their reporting, but anytime we talk about election security in Wyoming, the subject of hand counting always comes up. And so at the end of this piece from the Cowboy, there's a section on hand counting. And here's my honest opinion. Before voting machines, before tabulation machines, how did we ever conduct any election? Well, I did it by hand counting, right? A group of people got together and they said, and they just proceeded to count the ballots. Now, the question is, how do we know that any of those were accurate at all? Well, I mean, the elections that had questions, there was a recount done. I mean, and it doesn't happen in every race, but if it is impossible to hand count ballots now, how was it ever possible to hand count ballots then? And then the arguments of this is going to be such a huge process that it's going to take us 30 days to count all of these ballots. Well, how is that true? I mean, how did we do an election before all these tabulation machines? I mean, a lot of these arguments are just completely disingenuous. And let me see if I can, let's see, here it is. Let's see here. One of the quotations in the piece, unless we want to make it jury duty and force people to count ballots, I think we want to be very careful of the language we put in the legislation. Well, I don't think that you have to do that because you didn't have to do that before. So what was different then that is different now? Why is it that hand counting would be such a problem? Now, I think we have the technology, and obviously we have the ES&S machines, and if they're tested and you don't have people like Becky Hadlock running your election, there's no reason why you would have to hand count everything. You could just easily take a section of the ballots, a small number, count them, and do an audit. Take a couple of sections, because obviously it doesn't take that much time. How was it possible in the past to get election results through hand counting if all of it was so complicated and so so impossible? I mean, this entire argument from the folks that are making money on training people, to the public officials that are saying, oh, no, it's not possible, to the political partisans that are towing the party line, saying that we can't hand count ballots. I mean, this is just ridiculous. Can we please just be honest about our election system? And when people aren't honest, can we just hold them accountable? I see no reason why we can't do all of that. It doesn't make any sense to me. Well, let's go ahead and take our first break. And when we come back, I'm going to show you that really cool present that was given to me by the 115th Field Artillery Brigade. We'll do that in just a second when we come back. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism, coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Well, while we can't count on anything that Becky Hadlock does, or at least count on her to report any of it correctly, one thing that we can count on is the Wyoming National Guard. And I mentioned at the top of the broadcast that on, I guess it was Friday. Yeah, it was Friday when they flew into Cheyenne and returned home from deployment. And I was pleasantly surprised with a gift from our Cowboy Guard. And the 115th, their nickname is Cowboy Thunder. And, I always thought it was amazing that it was Wyoming that handled all the big guns. Of course, historically, the 300th out of Wyoming was known as the Cowboy Cannoneers. And so, anyway, I'm a super big fan. And before they left, I had sent some a couple of Cowboy state politics hats. Just, I thought, hey, why not? Might be fun to get a picture. Well, I got a little bit more than that. In fact, the two hats are signed by the 115th Field Artillery Brigade. And I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but let me just see if I can get it up close here and see if you can. There you go. So you can see all of the signatures on the hat. It's always fun to get new stuff to put in the studio, and I'm very, very touched that the entire unit signed the hats for me, and it's a pretty cool gift. They also brought some of their patches. This is their insignia there. You can see that. If you know anybody that's in the National Guard, you'll recognize that one. So a couple of patches, a couple of signed hats, very cool. Thank you very much to Sergeant Crine, our friend Carmen, and eventually, hopefully, in the near future, we're going to have her on the program just to talk about her experience, all the unclassified stuff, her experience overseas. But thank you very much. Welcome home, guys. We're very, very proud of you. And, I know that I can speak for my family and just about all the people that I know, that we were all really, really worried when the Iran stuff was going on because, unless that they were right in the middle of all of it. So anyway, thank you very much. And I really appreciate it. And they will be displayed in the Cowboy State Politics studio. Man, gifts were being handed out, little mementos, and then these came out, and I was very, very touched. So thank you very much. So one of the other things that maybe you've noticed is going on, by the way, President Trump is still speaking. He must be on a tear at Quantico. I can't wait to sit down and watch this after the program. But anyway, whether you realize it or not, we're about to have a government shutdown. And essentially, it all boils down to the Democrats wanting to go back to spending levels under Joe Biden, which means a return to all the NPR, you paying for NPR, a return to all of the money that's been going on overseas, from USAID, a return to all of the benefits for illegal aliens, and just return the spending to what it was, and the Democrats won't shut it down. Well, Tom Cotton was on the Hugh Hewitt show, and he basically told Hugh Hewitt that Schumer will shut down the government because he's terrified of a primary from AOC, from Breitbart News. And I quote, Senate Minority Leader Chuck U. Schumer is pushing Congress to a government shutdown because he's scared of being challenged in a primary by far-left Representative Alexander AOC. Senate Intelligence Committee Chair Tom Cotton theorized to Breitbart News. After Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries reportedly left their Monday afternoon meeting with President Trump without a deal to avoid a government shutdown before the Wednesday deadline, Cotton blasted the New York senator in an exclusive statement. Quote, Chuck Schumer is shutting down the government because he's terrified of a primary from AOC. His actions are disgraceful, the Arizona Republican said when asked for a reaction. Here is what he said. And let's see if I got it. Yeah, here it is. Listen to this. Maybe. Here we go.
Schumer is about to shut down the government because he's scared of a girl in New York City. Her name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and he fears that she will primary him 4 years from now in 2028 if he doesn't do the far-left bidding. If you recall, Hugh, in March, as we were on the verge of another Schumer shutdown, he caved and voted to keep the government open and gave all kinds of backflipping explanations for why he was not doing what the left demanded, and he got some blowback from his left and from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And he's been fearful of her and of this vote ever since. So he's apparently about to lead his caucus over the cliff and shut down the government because he doesn't want Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to run against him in 4 years.
Well, of course, everything that Chuck U. Schumer does is because of politics. House Republicans were joined by a singular Democrat, Jared Golden, in passing a bill on September 19th that would have kept the government funded until November 20. But Senate Democrats blocked it from advancing. Instead, they proposed their own funding bill demanding an additional $1.4 trillion for far-left projects, including free health care for illegal aliens, funding for NPR and PBS, among other things. Republicans blocked the Democrats' counteroffer from advancing in the Senate, leaving Congress to either come to an agreement by midnight on Tuesday or accept a government shutdown. And it looks like, from all the news reports I've seen last night and this morning, that that's probably going to happen. Schumer is going to own the shutdown if it occurs, Representative Dusty Johnson of South Dakota said on Monday's episode of Breitbart Daily. This is not a single partisan poison pill. There's nothing that would trip anybody up, Johnson said. We're just going to hit pause for 6 weeks so that we can negotiate while the government is open rather than negotiate while the government is closed. Apparently, that's asking too much of Chuck U. Schumer. And now the continuing resolution was pretty easy. Just continue where we're going right now for 6 weeks, and then, that'll give us some breathing room to come to some sort of agreement on how we're going to fund the government. But of course, Schumer and the rest of the Democrats won't do that. And Dusty Johnson, who I just mentioned, one of the reasons, he says the main reason why the Democrats are going to shut down the government is for, quote, COVID-era giveaways. Democrats are essentially threatening to shut it down over COVID-era giveaways, says Dusty Johnson. Johnson referred to the impending possible government shutdown as the stupidest shutdown, explaining that Republican requests have been made crystal clear. We don't have a deal yet. If we don't get a deal tomorrow, the government shuts down. The president is saying, hey, listen, let's finish the deal. Let's have a short-term pause button for 6 or 7 weeks till November 21st. Democrats are not willing to do that. Instead, because they get all of their demands immediately. Chuck Schumer says they're going to shut it all down. So what do they want? He said, detailing some of the left's demands. They want us to extend the COVID-era enhanced premium tax credits that help to give away health insurance to people. Some people making 400%, 500%, 600% of poverty. At the very least, Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress are not going to give that away for just a 6-week pause. During COVID, the Democrats, Obamacare already gave a pretty big tax credit to people so that they could buy health insurance through the exchange. These are not affected. Those are not affected by this debate, the congressman clarified. During COVID, even more money was layered on top of that. Again, COVID. It's been gone for 5 years. Those COVID-era tax credits expire at the end of the year if Congress doesn't do something. The Democrats are saying we're going to ransom a 6-week short-term funding package, $1.4 trillion, and we will not agree to that. A clean 6-week CR unless we continue all of the giveaways. It's insanity, and we can't continue with all of this, COVID-era funding. When Joe Biden got into office, his American Rescue Plan, I think that was, $2 trillion? I mean, that was cash dumped onto the system, which jacked up inflation to an honest 14, 15%, depending on which numbers you use, may have been as high as 17%. But, that was funding, that was spending we didn't need to do. But now, apparently, the Democrats are unwilling to negotiate because they want to continue all of that government spending. And, the midterms are coming, so they think that if they shut down the government, that the Republicans will be blamed because, in the history of government shutdowns, there's been 10 of them. It's almost always the Republicans that get blamed. Well, just about every time it's been the Republicans who've been in the minority, and the Democrats have been the ones leading the charge. Well, now the roles are reversed, and the question is, will Chuck Schumer and the Democrats be blamed for a government shutdown? And I think they probably will, though, it's the other side of this is shutting down the government is just stupid. There's no reason why we should have to, why two parties can't come to some sort of compromise. That's their job after all. And to go through all the machinations of shutting it down, stopping paychecks, furloughing people. Now, Trump says that he's going to fire a whole bunch of people that if the shutdown happens. I think that's a pretty easy way to clean out the ranks. But the question is, what happens during a government shutdown? There's all this fear mongering on TV. Little old ladies won't get their Social Security checks and we won't be paying our troops and all of that. But the question is, what actually happens? Well, there's a piece in Fox News this morning, and it's entitled Shutdown Explained. Who works, who doesn't, and how much does it cost? Democrats are demanding the Obamacare subsidy extension, while Republicans are pushing for a clean funding bill as the Wednesday deadline draws close. The clock, quoting now, the clock is ticking to fund the government, and so far, lawmakers do not have a path forward to avert a possible shutdown. The Senate returned to Washington, D.C. on Monday, and congressional leaders are slated to meet with President Donald Trump to negotiate a deal on funding the government. But the last week has seen both sides point the finger at who would be closing down the government. Now, a government shutdown happens when Congress can neither pass all 12 appropriations bills needed to fund the government, nor pass a continuing resolution, which typically keeps funding levels static, while lawmakers hustle to finish their work on spending bills. Since 1980, I just mentioned, there have been 10 government shutdowns. Only 3 have happened since the turn of the century. All shutdowns are different, and the impending shutdown is no exception. However, it could be have more devastating effects on the federal workforce than previous shutdowns, given the administration's orders to undertake mass firings. Programs like Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid will continue. That's mandatory spending. Those things aren't affected. Along with the Postal Service, the VA, the hospitals and clinics, Immigration and Border Patrol security activities, among others. Federal employees, however, will likely go without pay. However, and a string of agencies will see their services hampered by furloughs, like the IRS, the Small Business Administration. Housing programs may also see a delay in rental assistance and loans. Typically, shutdowns see thousands of federal workers deemed non-essential furloughed, but the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, released a memo last week that directed agencies to, quote, use this opportunity to consider reduction in force notices for all employees in programs that have no other available funding source and that don't comport to President Trump's priorities if lawmakers couldn't fund the government. So all of the big ones, right? Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all those things continue to be funded. Then there's the cost of the shutdown. Okay, while the cost of the partial closure this year is unknown, the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, did an analysis of the cost of the last time the government shuttered in 2019. The report, published in January of that year, found that the shutdown cost roughly $18 billion in federal spending delayed, which means that's not over and above. That means it's delayed federal spending. That is all of those workers that were furloughed, which led to a dip in that year's first quarter gross domestic product of $8 billion. So what they're saying is these federal workers didn't get their paycheck, and therefore they couldn't spend their money, and that caused a drop in the GDP. The report noted roughly $3 billion of that would not be recovered. It also found that federal workers who received delayed payments and private businesses were the hardest hit. Quote, some of those private sector entities will never recoup that. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Congressional Republicans and Democrats are at a stalemate. Let's see here. That's the long and the short of it, really, that a lot of these non-essential services who we may not need anyway don't get paid. They don't get funded. Some housing and rental assistance and all of that stuff, probably stuff that the government doesn't have any business being involved in anyway. Now, Democratic lawmakers demanded that the short-term extension at least include an extension to expiring Obamacare premium subsidies, and have warned that if Congress doesn't act, millions of Americans will see their health care costs increase. Okay, and anytime you hear any of that, the healthcare costs are going to go up. People aren't going to get paid. You need to ask whomever is saying that to quantify it. How do you know that that's true? Give me specifics. Don't use all these generalizations. Tell me exactly who is not getting paid, who is getting furloughed. Now, admittedly, there's going to be a lot of people that get furloughed, and rightfully so, right? If the government doesn't need them to operate, they don't need to be paid. And, and that's the other thing, too. The government largesse that we have created is, it's pretty incredible. Really, the government doesn't have that many jobs. Your local government is the easiest one to look at. The government's jobs provide infrastructure. So roads, water, sewer. Basic sanitation, basic needs. I like to drive on nice, smooth roads, so, that's within the scope of government. Police, it would be nice to have a police force, and in the case of the federal government, we're talking about federal law enforcement. Might be nice to have some fire protection back home, okay? So, yeah, the fire department, that's a necessary function of government. And you've got to have some sort of administration, to manage all of that. So That's pretty much it. And other than that, the government really shouldn't be involved in too many of those things. It's only the enumerated powers that government should be worried about. Now, I mean, we've got other programs like, workers' unemployment and Social Security and all of those things. And, those laws were passed, and there's a lot of people that depend on them. Yeah, I mean, definitely. But I would argue that we've grown those programs to such a point where they're really not necessary. So Trump has said that if these workers are going to get furloughed, then we should undertake mass firings while we're doing it and just examine what we need and what we don't need. And let's see if there's anything else in here. So Schumer and Jeffrey say that Democrats will meet anywhere, anytime with anyone to negotiate a bipartisan spending agreement that meets the needs of the American people. Okay, well, they did meet at the White House yesterday, and both of them said no. Because they're not going to agree to any reduction in spending, which is why they wanted $1.4 trillion. They go on to say, we are resolute in our determination to avoid a government shutdown and address the Republican health care crisis, right? So it's all about politics for them. They really don't care about the American people, and they're just banking on history that the Republicans will get blamed for all of this government shutdown business. Because, that's what's happened in the past, and there's no reason to assume that it wouldn't happen in the future. But really, what the Democrats are doing is relying on the same old playbook that they've used for years. That, it's continued to work, so why wouldn't they go back on it? Now, you would think after the last election that the Democrats would have a little bit of soul searching, that they would try to figure out what it is that they did wrong, what part of their agenda isn't resonating with the American people. Any logical person would do that. Hey, you got a big failure, you figure out what you did wrong. I mean, I'm doing that right now, right? I'm trying to make jelly in our house, our family. We are awash in fresh fruit, grapes and plums and choke cherries and you name it. And I have been trying to make jelly. Well, I'm not very good at it. In fact, I've made 2 attempts and both of them have failed. Well, after each one of them, I go find out, okay, here's what I did. I go talk to somebody who has a lot of success in making jelly and ask them, all right, so what did you do? Tell me the method. And then I try it and then I fail. And so I go back and I examine what I did before and say, okay, well, maybe I didn't do this right or I didn't do that right. And I make adjustments. You would think that the Democrats would do the exact same thing. We got our butt kicked in the last election. So what is it about our positions, our platform that isn't resonating with voters and that they would make adjustments? I think the most logical explanation to, why they lost is their focus on DEI. How everything was about race, gender, and these immutable characteristics that nobody has any control over. Their policies that boys have to change in the girls' locker room and vice versa. That boys can compete in women's sports. That trying to shove down Americans' throats that it is possible for a woman to become a man or vice versa. Things that just couldn't possibly be true. Well, overwhelmingly, and illegal immigration. The Democrats have been on a binge. Who could forget that? That illegal immigration was, the Democrats' plan to establish a permanent voter base for their party. That was their plan. Unbridled illegal immigration. Well, as it turns out, Americans rejected that almost out of whole cloth. And so, you would think that maybe they would take a clue from that, but they're not. And one of their chief spokespeople, Hillary Rodham Clinton, is out saying that it's white men of a certain religion that are the problem. It's not just conservatives, it's white men. From Fox News, and I quote, during a recent appearance on PMS NBC, now Ms. Now, I mean, did you see that? Where PMS NBC has changed their name to MS Now, Ms. Now. Ridiculous. Originally, PMS NBC was a partnership between Microsoft and NBC. That's where the MS comes from. But they're keeping that part. Now, Microsoft hasn't had anything to do with MSNBC for a really long time. They've just kept the name. Anyway, during a recent appearance on that station, former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton criticized, quote, white men of a certain religion and said they're doing damage to the country. Quote, the idea that you could turn the clock back and try to recreate a world that never was dominated by, let's just say it, white men of a certain persuasion and a certain religion and a certain point of view, a certain ideology is just doing damage to what we should be aiming for, she said on that idiotic station's program Morning Joe. And just give me a second here and I will I'll find you that video. I mean, it is the same old Democrat playbook, that it is white men that are the problem, that it is Christians that are the problem. Here you go. Check this out.
And the idea that you could turn the clock back and try to recreate a world that never was, dominated by, let's say it, white men of a certain persuasion, a certain religion, a certain point of view, a certain ideology, it's just doing such damage to what we should be aiming for. And we were on the path toward that. I mean, imperfectly, lots of, bumps along the way, but I agree with you, we were on the right trajectory.
We were on the right trajectory for demonizing an entire group of people just because of the color of their skin and a particular gender, that it's white men that are the problem. But she's added another facet to this, another group, and that is Christians. There is a decidedly anti-Christian sentiment that is brewing in this country. And fortunately, and I got to be careful how I say this, but, with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, I believe that this country is experiencing a revival. And it is long past time, and maybe it is only a revival of the younger generation, but you're seeing the church attendance skyrocket. There was did you see the Oregon game over the weekend where almost the entire crowd were wearing Charlie Kirk shirts that said freedom on them, white shirts? They panned the crowd, and it was like the entire stadium was full of white shirts. And my friends, I believe firmly that we are in the middle of a reawakening, a return to God, as it were. And I mean, that's really why, one of the big reasons why Charlie Kirk was killed is that he was speaking the message of the gospel and speaking truth. And the left just can't handle that. And so political commentators like Hillary Clinton, they have to get engaged in this war on Christianity. And, we used to say that America was a Christian nation. Certainly it began that way. You read the Constitution, and there is so much stuff from the Bible, specifically Deuteronomy, in the Constitution. We were a Christian nation, but we've moved way beyond that, my friends. I firmly believe that with Barack Obama and with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and people like Hillary Clinton, we were moving precipitously close to an anti-Christian nation. Not even, well beyond agnostic, but openly attacking Christians. And that's exactly what Hillary Clinton is doing. Some religious conservatives took Clinton's comments as a dog whistle about them. Tony Perkins, president of the Family Research Council, told Fox News Digital in an interview Friday that America is rejecting the ideology that Clinton is defending. Quote, she seems to be angry that the majority of Americans rejected the trajectory of the left that the left had America on. And it's not just white men of a particular persuasion, and I'm not sure what she means by that. Straight men? I'm not sure. But the reality is America has rejected this leftist ideology that has totally decoupled itself from truth. During her interview with Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, Clinton said, quote, some people are actually scared about what's going on in our country. The idea that we, the people, that all men and women are created equal, that seems to be in the crosshairs of those on the right who want to turn the clock back on the progress that has been made, writing out huge chunks of American history, slavery, suffrage, anything inconvenient, take it out of museums, take it out of the national parks, Perkins said that he thinks Clinton wants an America that is antithetical to American values. Quote, I guess she wants to continue to advance an administration and ideology of the left that is killing unborn children, mutilating our children that do survive and that are born, and indoctrinating them in their schools. I guess it's the trajectory she wants America to continue on. The idea that there was never America in which that was normality, he said. And just look at this has always been our challenges, and they're the ones who've been rewriting history. They've been doing it for 100 years. In light of Clinton's remarks, Perkins said that he's concerned Clinton would even respect or accept the vision of our founding fathers. And I think that's pretty easy to take from her comments, in that, she rejects the idea that all people are created equal. Instead, the left has been focused on creating protected classes. That's what it's called in politics. Because if you are gay, you're a protected class, or if you are, some other persuasion, or if you're black, or if you're Hispanic, or if you're Asian, everybody's got their own protected classes. And a lot of this goes back to the leftist belief in multiculturalism. Not that we are all one melting pot, that we all come to this country and that we add the best things about our culture, and that we assimilate into the American culture. No. That's not what the left wants. They want multiculturalism, which is that everybody's culture is respected. Everybody has to have their own belief system, and you shouldn't mix the two. Well, we've seen the disastrous effects of that, like in places like Dearborn, Michigan. I mention this one all the time, where Sunday Muslim prayers are broadcast over the loudspeakers. It's not just Sunday prayers. It's noontime prayers every day. That we will have a what's the word I was looking for? A society that is it just has different groups. That is completely separate from the whole idea of America since its founding. That's the vision of the country that Hillary Clinton and the progressives want. That there is no melting pot, that we are not one culture, and that we have to absolutely respect all of the insane beliefs of the left, that, men can become women and women can become men. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. Well, let's go ahead and take our second break. And when we come back, we'll continue with the program. Lots more to come on this Tuesday edition of Cowboy State Politics. I got a doozy coming up. A parent strips down to her bikini to protest her daughter having to dress with boys. We'll do that in just a second.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap, and your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you non-stop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. To do that, contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time, their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday. I'm David Iverson, number 28 on the list of the 100 podcasts you should be listening to in 2025. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all of your support. Wouldn't be able to do this if it weren't for you, so thank you very much. And thank you to the folks at FeedSpot wow, it's to get that sort of recognition. There's nobody else in Wyoming that can say they're on that list, and so thank you very much. Hey, if you are searching for something to do, it's that time in Sheridan County, and this is a big deal this time of year. The Sheridan County Republican Party Reagan Day dinner. It's going to take place on October 11th at the Ramada Inn, and you can get your tickets at SCGOP. Hold on, let me just make sure I get the website right. I always do this. I set up an ad and think that I can remember the website. But anyway, there's a couple of great speakers. One of them is my friend Ovi Muntean. And if you're a longtime listener of Cowboy State Politics, you'll remember him. He and his family escaped communist Romania when he was 12. And if you want to know why, how dangerous socialism is, he's your man. We've done several programs with several interviews with him, and frankly, it's just terrifying. So if you want to go to the Reagan Day dinner, it's October 11th. And it's at the Ramada Inn. And you go to the website, scwygop.us. It's always a great time, and it's one of the few times during the year where you get to get dressed up and do some Republican stuff and raise some money for the party. So it's always a great time, and it's going to be a great time this year. So scwygop.us if you want to come to the dinner. I highly suggest you do. I've been mentioning over the program that one of the problems the Democrats are having, and I don't mean to. Oh, by the way, if you missed that interview with Carly Provenza and Mike Yen on the podcast, it's available on the podcast. Cowboy State. You go to the website cowboystatepolitics.com or anywhere that you get your podcasts. I'm telling you, that is a revealing interview. There's a ton of stuff in there. I don't think that we agreed on any more than just a couple of things, and they were just offhanded comments. But if you want a view into how the Democrats think, that's the interview. So go check it out. It's available on the podcast right now. But one of the problems that they're having is the Democrats are relying on the same arguments they've used year over year. And why wouldn't they? For them, it makes sense, right? These things have worked in the past, so why wouldn't they work now? Attack Trump. Trump hates everybody. Trump's going to throw you in prison. Trump's going to destroy the economy. And, you vote for us. We won't do that. The only problem is that the Democrats have had 4 years of destroying the country. And this country has decidedly changed in the last couple of years, simply because Americans are tired of the Democrats' bullcrap. That's why they overwhelmingly elected Donald Trump, despite what Kamala Harris says. Did you hear that? She said that the 2024 election was the closest election in American history. No, it wasn't. It wasn't even close. However, parents across this country are still having to deal with all of this DEI bullcrap, and they're A parent in California decided to make a point to her local school district. And this is from Fox News. Woman disrobes at California school board meeting in protest of locker room policies. And I quote, local California women's rights activist Beth Bourne protested the policy allowing transgender students to access to girls' locker rooms by stripping down to a bikini at a local school board meeting. Bourne, who chairs the Moms for Liberty in Yolo County, took part in the Davis Joint Unified School Board meeting on September 18th, where she highlighted school policies on locker room access. And I quote, I'm a parent in the Davis Unified School District, and I'm here today to talk about the policies you have for the locker rooms in our junior high school. So we're not even talking about high school students, junior high. So Emerson Holmes Harper Junior High. Right now, we require our students to undress for PE class. So I'm just going to give you an idea of what that looks like when I undress, Bourne said before taking off her clothes to reveal a bikini. She continued, so right now, this school district is saying that depending on a child's transgender identity, that they can pick which bathroom they want. So we have right now at the school district, we have children self-identifying into different bathrooms just based off of and Bourne was interrupted by members of the school board who ordered her to stop. Because of course, we can't see that in a school board meeting. That's inappropriate. But when it comes to your child's junior high locker room, that's entirely okay. Let's take a look at the video and watch her do it. It's actually pretty funny because the school board members, well, they just can't handle it. And just look at their reactions.
Hi, good evening. I'm a parent in the Davis Unified School District, and I'm here today to talk about the policies you have for the locker rooms in the junior high schools. So Emerson, Holmes,
watch their faces.
Harper Junior High. Right now, we require our students to undress for PE class. So I'm just going to give you an idea what that looks like when I undress. So right now, this school district is saying that depending on a child's transgender identity, that they can pick which bathroom they want. So we have, right now at this school district, we have children self-identifying into different bathrooms just based off of their...
No, you cannot.
I have my bathing suit on. Excuse me, this is allowed.
We're going to recess.
No, we're going to recess.
Finish my comments, or you are violating my First Amendment right. I am putting on my PE uniform.
You are disrupting.
You're disrupting it. You're disrupting the meeting. We can't have you doing that. Now, the Wyoming equivalent to that is that, and this happened several years ago, but it was at Sheridan County School District number 2, and they were talking about books that are basically pornography that are in, at the time, were in the children's section of the library. And a dad gets up and starts reading from the book, and I mean, it's bad. I mean, we're not talking about anything that's appropriate. Not even for this program. I wouldn't read this stuff, that sort of stuff. Well, anyway, he starts reading it, and he's shut down. That's inappropriate for our school board meeting. So wait a minute, hold on. So it's inappropriate to read in front of a room full of adults, but it's totally okay for school-age children to go grab that out of the library. Totally fine. Don't worry about it. I mean, this is no big deal. This is the same thing. And, I'll admit, okay, so stripping down in front of a school board meeting, okay. But I think that she made the point. Now, for about 5 minutes, the meeting resumed, and the board allowed Bourne to finish her comments. Bourne again began stripping down to a bikini. The board ordered another recess and resumed about 30 minutes later, moving on to a new topic. Now, Bourne told CBS News on September 19th that she has attended the school board meetings every month for the past 3 years to address the locker room issue and felt she needed to take drastic measures to make her point. If the adults don't feel comfortable watching someone, and I'm a 50-year-old woman, how can they expect girls to feel comfortable doing that in the locker room, Bourne said. I thought I made a really good point. Trustee Cecilia Escamilla Greenwald told the local news station, The Vanguard, that the police were called after the second recess and that the board is considering next steps. Quote, we're going to be meeting about this, about what to do in such situations and what we're going to do. I know that our superintendent is going to be speaking with council to see what can be done because it's very inappropriate for anybody to be coming before the board and behaving in such a manner. It's very inappropriate. But again, it's completely fine for your daughter to watch a boy undress in that school district. It's completely okay for your son to watch a female undress in their own locker room. This is the insanity that the left has gone to. And this is specifically what American voters have rejected. The only problem is the Democrats haven't picked up on that. And definitely at your own local school board, those policies are continuing. This is why it's so important to pay attention to local politics, because you are much, much more likely to lose your liberty at the local level than you are at the state level and certainly at the congressional level. You've a lot of city councils and school boards. They're run by a bunch of little tyrants. And, and a great example is the school boards in Wyoming being given enough money to give everybody an 8.5% raise. And what do? They spend it on other stuff. And now they're just backpedaling. And I got to tell you, my friends, I've got something coming. We're going to have to wait like a week and a half, but call it round 2 with the school board. You are going to be shocked by what we've uncovered. The only problem is I got to wait a little bit. And I mean, I'd love to tell you about it right now, but I got to keep this one in the bag. But it is so important for you to attend school board meetings, county commissioner meetings. I mean, there's an issue at our county commission right now. Another story that just waiting on the documents for. So that one, there's corruption at every level, and our system was not set up for citizens to be unengaged and uninformed. The only way that our system works is if citizens are engaged, that they hold their public officials accountable for what they do, and make sure that they're acting in your best interest. And, we shouldn't have to. We should be able to elect people of good conscience that are going to do the job they promised that they would do. But a lot of times people just run for office because they want their own little fiefdom. And we see most of that happen at the school board. When you've got one district in Sheridan County whose budget is over $60 million, when the entire city of Sheridan doesn't have anywhere close to that size budget, there's a serious problem. And I, for the life of me, I don't understand why more people don't go to school board meetings. And it's just, you've got to, my friends, like if you want to take care of your kids, if you want to take care of your money, if you want to make sure that your school board is not running amok, well, the only way that you can do that is if you hold these people accountable. So good job to the mom in California who stripped down to a bikini. At least she made her point, got thrown out in the process, but hey, you got to make a point sometime. If you're like me, you've been a little bit worried about all of the advantages that the U.S. has given to other countries, specifically China. Well, there's a piece in Breitbart this morning, and it's entitled "How the U.S. Gave Away Its Technology Edge to China." Whether you realize it or not, most of the things that you use on a daily basis are not manufactured here. Even things like antibiotics, Tylenol, those sorts of things, down to the shoes and the clothes that you wear. Most of them are most likely not made here, and much of it comes from China. But that same thing holds true for all of our technology. For decades, and again, this is from Breitbart, for decades, American companies made a straightforward calculation that they would share their technology with Chinese partners in exchange for access to the world's largest consumer market and its low-cost labor. General Motors, Intel, and thousands of other firms formed joint ventures that helped their Chinese partners learn advanced manufacturing techniques, chip design, and management practices. The truth is that almost all of the major technological changes or advances that have happened in the world are because of America. We're the ones that came up with it. And a lot of companies, they just mentioned a few of them, including Apple, wanted to manufacture their products at a lower price. In order to do that, they had to give away secrets to their company. It boosted profits for many of the biggest firms, but a new National Bureau of Economic Research working paper suggests the calculation was a collective mistake, one that left American workers, smaller companies, and the economy as a whole worse off. The paper is by Jado Chow of the University of Texas at Austin, and George Cui and Youngan Shim of the International Monetary Fund, and Yongsuk Shin of Washington University. Notice all of these names in St. Louis. They argue that the real mistake wasn't at the company level, but at the national level. Each firm weighed its own trade-offs, lower costs and access to Chinese markets, against the risk of helping a direct rival. What no one accounted for was how these same deals would strengthen Chinese companies competing against other American firms, from General Motors and Chrysler down to the smallest auto parts suppliers. The results echo the famous China shock research by David Auteur, David Dorn, and Gordon Hanson, which showed how a surge in Chinese imports reduced jobs and wages in many U.S. communities. You ever heard about you've heard the term the Rust Belt? Do you know where that came from? It's because of all the shuttered factories, companies that moved their manufacturing overseas, and so their giant factories are just sitting there abandoned, and they're the color of rust. That's where that term comes from, because many American companies moved their operations overseas, to get the benefit of lower labor and to open up the big markets. The study turns the lens on the investment side, how the choices of American companies themselves helped accelerate China's rise with lasting costs for the broader U.S. economy. The researchers examined what happened to American and Chinese firms between 1999 and 2012, a period when joint ventures proliferated. To separate cause from coincidence, they paired Chinese firms that entered joint ventures with similar firms that did not, and they drew on changes of Chinese investment rules to isolate the effects. The pattern was clear. Chinese companies that formed joint ventures grew rapidly, increasing sales by 27% within 4 years. That's a huge jump. Even Chinese companies that weren't direct partners benefited, growing faster in industries with more foreign investment. American firms told a very different story. In industries with more joint ventures formed in China, U.S. companies experienced declining sales, declining employment, investment, and innovation. Using a detailed economic model, the researchers calculated that if the U.S. had banned joint ventures starting in 1999, American welfare would be 1.2% higher today. That may sound small, but across a $28 trillion economy, it amounts to hundreds of billions of dollars. For China, the cost of such a ban would be far steeper, 10.3% reduction in welfare. The benefits would not have been evenly distributed, though. Large companies that had formed joint ventures would have lost 22% of their profits, but smaller competitors would have gained, and crucially, American workers would have earned nearly 3% higher wages as companies kept more production at home. Now, there are many people that warned about this, that if you're going to outsource all of your manufacturing to China and shake hands with the Chinese, then eventually your company was going to be outpaced by a Chinese company. Now, economists don't explicitly address the puzzle their findings raise. If the joint ventures created such a broad harm, why didn't the government step in? After all, companies aren't supposed to coordinate with competitors. Doing so would likely violate antitrust laws. The answer involves both economic thinking and political reality. For decades, the Washington consensus held that free capital flows benefited everyone. Restrictions on American investment abroad seemed like the kind of central planning that characterized failing economies, not successful ones. Even economists who worried about trade adjustment costs focused on imports, not on how American companies' own investment decisions might undermine domestic competitors. The warnings of Pat Buchanan, the conservative columnist whose 3 presidential bids challenged both parties' embrace of globalization, went largely unheeded and were often derided by the establishment. And I remember when all this was happening, when Clinton gave China most favored nation status, and there was a huge surge of Chinese imports. Pat Buchanan was the guy out there arguing against globalization. And, a lot of the things that he was arguing for are very similar to the policies of the Trump administration, that we have to protect American companies, that we have to protect, if we do that, it protects American national security. And, there have been a lot of calls. And one of the places where Charlie Kirk was a big advocate was against free trade, is that, free trade, that is, allowing anything to happen in the market, which I am a free market capitalist. But that also means that you have to protect your own products, that you have to protect your own company and your own intellectual property. I mean, that's just business. And if you're not doing that at the expense of your domestic partner, your domestic businesses, then it's going to eventually harm your national security. You should absolutely be protecting your own business. The way that you do that is you keep trade secrets close to the vest. That you don't partner with a firm that wants to destroy your business and your country. And that's what a lot of American companies did. Now, the the piece goes on. Even economists who worried about trade adjustment costs focused on imports. I mentioned that. There was also a timing problem. The harm unfolded gradually and was hard to see. By the time the pattern became clear, Chinese firms growing stronger while American competitors and workers struggled. Much of the technology had already been transferred. The paper shows that restrictions would have been the most valuable in 1999, when the technology gap was the widest. But that was also when optimism about Chinese integration was at its peak. That was the whole line of the Democrat Party, that if we expose China to American products and American, ingenuity, that somehow they would become more American. I mean, this is the flaw of the Democrat Party. Economically speaking, it's why their policies don't work, is that there are evil companies in the world and there are countries that do want to destroy America. One of those happens to be China. Perhaps most importantly, this paper points out that there was no obvious constituency for action. Large corporations forming joint ventures had no interest in restrictions. Smaller competitors being harmed often didn't understand that joint ventures were part of the problem. And workers, who would have benefited most from those restrictions, had no seat at the table when investment policy was made. Many Americans at the time thought Buchanan's warnings were unduly pessimistic. Republicans frequently criticized conservative economic nationalists for betraying what they insisted was the optimistic message of Ronald Reagan. The study suggests that smaller policies than outright bans may have worked even better if companies had been required to compensate their American competitors for the losses those rivals would suffer from technology transfer. Only in industries where America had the largest technological lead would have been preserved with the most advantages. But fortunately, though, we have a president that understands the problem in a global economy, that there are countries that want to destroy the American economy and the American way of life, and they are actively working to do so. Why is it then? I mean, if you don't agree with that, why do we have so many people being arrested for espionage? Most of them are from China, from selling not only state secrets but corporate secrets to their bosses in China. Why is it that we've seen so much of that? Well, it's because China has been engaged in that for a very long time. And it probably started before they were given most favored nation status. I mean, that was the economic blunder of, the last couple of centuries, probably, giving our direct competitor an edge over, and I guess immediately it wasn't an edge over the economy. But I mean, if you looked at what was happening, you could see that. That's why, and this all happened when I was in high school, but I remember, that was a big topic in debate, speech and debate. What are we doing? Why are we giving China most favored nation status? They're not going to become like America, as the Democrats claimed. And it was mostly Bill Clinton. But the research also carries a warning that these policies made sense 2 decades ago when the technology gap was wide. Implementing them now delivers for far smaller benefits and even may backfire. The window of using investment restrictions to maintain American technological leadership may be closing. The deeper issue is collective action. What made sense for each individual company, trading technology for market access, added up to something harmful for the country as a whole. It's kind of a problem that the markets alone rarely solve. As the U.S. and China continue to compete in semiconductors and abroad and across a whole swath of the economy, one of the things that President Trump is trying to do is to level the playing field, to protect American companies from exploitation from the likes of China and other countries. But free and I was talking to somebody the other day, and they made the argument that what we don't need is free trade, we need fair trade, and I will agree with both of them. But as a company and as a country, we need to protect the companies that we have here, and it's just business, right? Like if you're competing with a company, you all have to do one of two things. You either A, have to produce a better product, or B, you have to have better prices. One of those two things, and as I always say, you can have faster, cheaper, or better, but you can only choose two. And that is true with just about every business. You've got to protect your business, and making deals with the Chinese communists is not a way to do that. But that's where Democrats failed for years on end, and Republicans just went right along with it. not protecting our own products. So anyway, I mean, there's a lot of work for the Trump administration to do, and I think that this paper that I just read you, and again, that's in Breitbart Business Digest if you want to go read it for yourself. I think it's fascinating, and they make a great argument as to why we need to have more protectionist policies with our economy. Well, let's go ahead and take our third break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the digital ID that Britain has put in effect. Terrifying stuff. We'll do that in just a second. Everybody say, nice gone away, rocks now down, nothing left to take. No one gets today, we got to see the truth, night far away. Tell me what you want, here's what you got. You've been every day more than we have ever seen. Rocks now down, don't ask why. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only going to continue to expand. From every corner in this state to every state in this country. And the truth is, my friends, this thing is expanding faster than anybody, well, faster than I thought it would. But the truth is, I can only do it with you and God's help. Thank you to both of you. We've all got to be, very thankful for all the gifts that we've been given. We just thank God each and every day that we've got what we have. And thank you very much for listening to the program. By the way, if you ever want to send me a note, the email address that I set up specifically for the live show is the show, THE show, at cowboystatepolitics.com. You can go ahead and send me a note, whether you got a story tip or you just want to complain about the program. I get a lot of that. I call them love notes. If you're not receiving love notes from some of the people that watch your program, well, then you're really just not doing anything, anything productive, man. You got to stir the pot. You got to keep people on their toes. And, every time I get one of those, basically they're hate mail, but every time I get one of those, I just remind myself, yep, definitely over the target. And if you're not receiving flack, well, then you're not doing anything. So anyway, there was an article in the Cowpie yesterday. And the headline was, and I don't remember the exact headline, it's "Man Bags Monster Bull Elk on Public Land." And turns out, well, he had to trespass to get there. From the Cowboy, and an article entitled, Hunter Who Shot Huge Bull Elk on Public Land Accused of Trespassing During the Hunt. And I quote, a Gillette elk hunter says he shot the bull of a lifetime on public land, trespassed across roughly 6 miles of private land to get there, the ranch manager claims. Terrence Munger, who cited a Wyoming Game and Fish game warden for hunting, trapping, fishing, or collecting antlers or horns on private land without permission, according to the Campbell County Circuit Court records obtained by the Cowboy. The citation was issued for the alleged violation on September 18th, the very day that he talked to the Cowboy. Now, Munger, the guy that shot the bull elk, previously told the Cowboy that he shot the trophy-class bull elk September 18th, the same day as the citation, on public land, while hunting with an over-the-counter general elk license. Tanner Handy, manager of the Quarter Circle 7 Ranch, told Cowboy State Daily that Munger trespassed on property he oversees to access the public land he hunted on. The bull in question was killed on a section of public Wyoming State Trust land in Elk Area 129. However, the section is landlocked by private land. In order to get to where the bull was shot, the hunters had to cross roughly a mile of the Quarter Circle Ranch property, plus roughly 5 miles of a neighboring ranch's property. So in other words, the guy trespassed all over the place to get to a state section to shoot this bull elk. And no doubt the state section was leased from the ranch, though I don't see that in the article. I'm just guessing. Now, Wyoming has 2 types of trespassing statutes: Title VI, Basic Criminal Trespass, and Title 23, which is hunting-related trespassing. In either case, it's a misdemeanor. Title 23 trespass is punishable by fines of up to $1,000, loss of hunting privileges, and possible seizure of firearms or harvested game. Title 23 trespass reports are handled by game wardens. Title VI trespass reports must be handled by a sheriff's deputy and carries with it a $750 fine. Under Title VI, landowners are required to post the property and or give alleged trespassers a warning. Under Title 23, there are no such requirements for landowners. Hunters, anglers, and shed huntlers have the sole responsibility for knowing where they are at all times and for avoiding straying onto public land. So in other words, if you're out hunting, it's your job to know where you're at, and you should be well aware of that. And I'm still going to encourage you not to rely on that little app that's on one of these things. I mean, they're not entirely accurate. You may very well be standing on somebody's private property, and when the app tells you you're on public land. The reason for that is this thing relies on just GPS signals. And there's nothing pinning it to the ground, so you don't know exactly where you're at. So, I mean, I've had a lot of arguments with people saying, no, that phone app is entirely accurate. No, it's not. And don't rely on it, because you're probably going to get a ticket if you're caught. So anyway, the guy that bags the bull elk and then bragged to the Cowboy, well, he's got a little ticket problem now, and he's probably going to lose that bull elk, because, again, and later on in the article, it says, let's see if I can find it here. It says, well, anyway, somewhere in the article, it says that the landowner found a lock on a gate that was shot off or cut, and that's the only way that you could have accessed that state section. So not only did the guy trespass, it looks like the lock was shot off the gate. And so that guy's got some problems, and talking to the Cowboy is among them. So anyway, now I'm assuming that you're all watching what's going on in New York. By the way, I think New Yorkers are going to get exactly what they deserve, which is they didn't show up at the polls, and now Mom Dami, an absolute communist, is probably going to be the mayor of New York. And I foresee a lot of New York companies fleeing that state, as they rightly should. Now, why do I say that Mom Dami is a communist? I mean, it's been reported all over the place, but I don't know that you've necessarily heard this. Here's the soundbite that I've played for you several times, but I think that it can't get old enough to remind you of what's about to happen in New York. Here is Zoran Mamdani. Listen to this.
But then there are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right, or whether it's the end goal of seizing the means of production, where we do not have the same level of support at this very moment. And what I want to say is that it is critical that in the way that we organize, in the way that we set up our work and our priorities, that we do not leave any one issue for the other, that we do not.
Yeah, we've got to seize the means of production straight out of the Communist Manifesto. If you had any doubt about who this guy is, that's him. And maybe we should do one more just so you don't forget.
What the purpose is about this entire project, it's not simply to raise class consciousness, but to win socialism. And obviously raising class consciousness is a critical part of that. But making sure that we have candidates that both understand that and are willing to put that forward at every which moment that they have, at every which opportunity that they are given. We have to continue to elect more socialists. And we have to ensure that we are unapologetic about our socialism.
We have to ensure that we are unapologetic about our socialism. Well, Trump says that Mamdani will be one of the best things to ever happen to our great Republican Party. And I happen to agree with him. And the historian in me says that with the exception of the 2020 election, which the more I think about it, I think that thing was like totally rigged. But there has never been another American election that was wrong. And the reason I say that is voters get what they deserve. That if it's low voter turnout or if it's, the uneducated, low information voter, as Rush used to call it, that you get what you deserve. And that the results of that election, you're going to learn that you should be paying more attention to who these people are and that you should get out the vote. Well, from Breitbart News, quote, President Donald Trump on Monday weighed in on the New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani following Mayor Eric Adams' exit from the race. Yeah, that happened this weekend. Eric Adams is out. So now you've got Sliwa, Mamdani, and Cuomo in the race. One of them needs to drop out because there's a good chance that Mamdani's going to win anyway. But if you have three candidates, the vote's going to get split, and the most progressive guy is going to win. That's how it works. In a post on True Social, Trump wrote, quote, self-proclaimed New York City communist Zohran Mamdani, who is running for mayor, will prove to be one of the best things to ever happen to our great Republican Party. He's going to have problems with Washington like no mayor in the history of our once great city. Remember, he needs the money from me as president in order to fulfill all of his fake communist promises. He won't be getting any of it. So what's the point of voting for him? This ideology has failed always for thousands of years. It will fail again, and that's guaranteed. He is exactly right. Communism, socialism, wherever it has been tried, the only thing it's been successful in doing is killing millions and millions of people and creating poverty and death. That is the history of socialism without exception. Now, while I would hope that the whole poverty, misery, and death part, there is going to be poverty and misery. That's for sure. It's the whole death part that I hope that we can avoid this time. But Trump's latest comments follow months of back and forth with Mamdani. After Mamdani won July's Democrat primary, Trump called him a 100% communist lunatic and commented that Democrats such as AOC and Chuck U. Schumer were groveling over him. Mamdani, who advanced with more than 43% of the primary vote, was labeled by Trump as, quote, a big moment in the history of our country, pointing to his alignment with the Democratic Socialists of America. And by the way, let's see here. So I wonder if I can just show you this. Let's see here. Share screen, maybe. I want to just show you a picture of him and just see if there it is. Okay. Yeah. Check this guy out. Now, who could argue with a face like that? I mean, really? Doesn't he just look like a politician you just absolutely want to vote for? Well, anyway, he's probably going to win. Now, in July, Mamdani said that Trump, quote, threatened to have me arrested, stripped of my citizenship, put in a detention camp, and deported over his pledge to defy ICE. When asked about Mamdani's commitment, Trump replied, well, then we'll just have to arrest him, and stated his administration would be watching him closely. In August, responding to reports that Trump might get involved in the race, Mamdani remarked, quote, I am Donald Trump's worst nightmare as a progressive Muslim immigrant who actually fights for the things that I believe in. That should terrify the living crap out of you, my friends, that not only is he a communist, he is an Islamist as well. It was just last week, I think, that I hope maybe I played the video for you. But anyway, Mamdani appeared on Qatari state television. Couple of questions here. First, what is a mayoral candidate from New York doing on Qatari state TV? And secondly, why is he advocating for communism in the first place? Well, it's because he's a radical and he always has been. Well, the exchanges between Trump and Mamdani have been amplified by endorsements within the Democrat Party itself. Governor Kathy Hochul endorsed Mamdani in September, writing that he, quote, shares my commitment to a New York where children can grow up safe in their neighborhoods. Well, that's not true at all. Mamdani has repeatedly said that he wants cashless bail and continue the policies that he's been advocating for. Governor Kathy Hochul of New York has endorsed the little communist Zoran Mamdani running for mayor of New York. This is a rather shocking development and a very bad one for New York City. How can such a thing happen? Washington will be, second page 2, as Paul Harvey would say. We'll be watching this situation closely. Now, the mayoral race has also intersected with former Eric Adams' decision to drop out yesterday, I believe, 2 days ago, leaving Mamdani with a 20-point lead in the Suffolk University polling over Governor Andrew Cuomo. Mamdani marked Adams' exit by saying that Trump and his billionaire donors might determine other candidates' actions, but they won't decide this election. Well, it's too bad for New York that it won't, because Mamdani's going to destroy that once great city. And, all of his promises of, government-run grocery stores and no cash bail, well, you're going to see the reactions to it, or the results, rather. Now, another communistic progressive idea, and tell me how familiar this sounds. Great Britain, according to the BBC, has created a new digital ID, and it's going to be mandatory to work in the UK. This is a terrifying prospect. Now, for a long time, we've been talking about digital currency. Now, while that has, kind of, I don't want to say that it's lost steam, but there have been places in the world that have said, no, we're not going to do a digital currency. What this digital ID is, and I was watching Glenn Beck yesterday, and I think he described it perfectly, that this is creating a net under all of these other policies that they can just fall into. It's creating the infrastructure to push all, perhaps this new digital currency. But a digital ID, that is not something that's on paper, that it's on one of these little things. It will allow the government to track every single thing that you do, every single place that you go. Now, and I've often told you that this little device is the most sophisticated surveillance device ever invented. Because if you carry a phone around, they pretty much know where you're at. I mean, I think that we've all probably had the experience of talking about something in your house, and then, maybe you're talking about a vacation to Bora Bora or something, and then you pick up the phone, and there's, looky there, there's an ad for vacation packages to Bora Bora. Your phone is a surveillance device. This new digital ID, that is, you have to have it to work. And the question is, where does all that information go? Well, it goes to a central database. Keir Starmer, who is the PM of Great Britain right now, said the new digital ID scheme would make it tougher to work in the UK illegally and offer countless benefits to citizens, while his senior minister, Darren Jones, said it could be the bedrock of the modern state. Now listen to this. So you can't work with it. Now, first, that's just false on its face. Right now in America, you have to be a citizen to vote. You have to pass the Social Security test. You got to have a Social Security number. We had the E-Verify system, all of that, and still illegal aliens across the country hold jobs. So first, that argument's a bunch of bullcrap. However, opposition parties argued that the proposals would not stop people crossing the channel in small boats. The prime minister set out his plans in a broader speech to a gathering of world leaders, in which he said it has been too easy, quote, too easy for people to work illegally in the UK because the center left has been squeamish about things that were clearly true. Addressing the listen to this, the title of this conference, the Global Progressive Action Conference, attended by politicians including Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, Sir Keir said it was time to, quote, look ourselves in the mirror and recognize where we've allowed our parties to shy away from people's concerns. It is not compassionate left-wing politics to rely on labor that exploits foreign workers, blah, blah, blah. Now, in response to this, Reform UK said that the public was, quote, waking up to the fact that Keir Starmer is just continuing the Tory legacy of high taxes and mass immigration. Despite having only 5 members of parliament, Nigel Farage's Reform Party has been leading in the opinion polls for several months. The Prime Minister suggested facing the challenge of reform could be a big focus when he addresses the party. Okay, whatever. So they're couching this whole digital ID in maybe hits the possibility of reducing illegal immigration, but it's not going to. I mean, there's no reason why to assume that it would. Every country in the world has an immigration problem, and the UK is not in any way immune from that. And in the UK, you have to have in order to work, you have to have a government insurance card. And on I can't even remember the program I was listening to over the weekend, but it's on Patriot 125 before Sean Hannity. But the point was, look, you've got this little national insurance card that you have to have in order to work in the UK, and illegal aliens still get to work. So why would we assume that having your ID on this little guy would make it any different? Now, Jones, who is the Prime Minister's chief secretary, said, quote, if we get this digital ID system working, and the public being with us, that will be the bedrock of the modern state and will allow for really quite exciting public service reform in the future. Sir Tony Blair tried to introduce compulsory ID cards, but the idea was scrapped by the conservative liberal Democratic coalition in 2010. However, Keir Starmer has recently said he believes that the debate has moved on in the last 20 years, and we shall all carry a lot more digital ID now than we ever did. Oh, isn't that great? That you can be tracked everywhere you go. And a digital currency is only the next step in doing that. Let's see here. Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey said his party would, quote, fight tooth and nail against the scheme and would, quote, add to our tax bills and bureaucracy whilst doing next to nothing to tackle the challenge of the channel crossings. All right, so, I mean, the politicians are saying that, look, this doesn't have anything to do with illegal immigration. This is about control. And, I mean, you're talking about a country that is already putting people in prison for Facebook posts and posts on Twitter. You don't think that this digital ID is going to be the next step in control? It absolutely will. But here's the other thing. If the left, and don't ever kid yourself, that the left, both in the UK and here at home, they are about one thing only, and that is controlling you. Because the only way that their policies work, their ideas work, is in a university bubble, or if they can control you and force you to go along with them. And I mean, that's exactly what this ID. So the digital ID will be mandatory as a means of providing right to work in the UK by the end of the parliament, expected to be 2029 at the latest. It will be held on people's phones in a similar way to contactless payment cards. It's expected to include a person's name, date of birth, nationality, or residency status, and a photo, and a whole bunch of other crap to go along with it. The consultation will also consider whether additional information, such as an address, would be included. However, it is understood that officials have been exploring whether a digital ID scheme could reduce the use of fake documents and provide a more consistent approach to verifying workers' identity. The government and the rollout would eventually make it simpler to add for services like driver's licenses, childcare, welfare, as well as streamlining access to tax records. Well, of course it would. Why wouldn't they jump on top of that? And I mean, it's just the question is, what do people think about it? Well, most of them are absolutely against it because they see the danger that it produces. And my friends, I have to tell you this, the UK is not the only country to do this. I believe it was the Swiss. Let's see, I guess I didn't print that article out, but I mean, there are several countries that are doing this, leftist countries that are run by progressive politicians. And make no mistake, this is about control. And as it relates to Wyoming, I remember a bill last session where it was absolutely talking about digital IDs. And while they weren't mandatory, my argument through the whole thing was this is the first step, right? Why would you authorize this? This is the first step towards it. You know, very similar to a lot of my arguments surrounding the stable token or any of that, that it is a step towards a digital currency. That was my argument. This is the same thing here. This is the same step towards a completely digital ID. And once you do that, you're going to be able to be tracked everywhere you go. Brings up another question. When you go into the liquor store or the convenience store to buy a can of chew or whatever, they card you, and they take your card and they scan the back of it. Where does that data go? You ever ask them? Where does that data go? Now, I was in Cheyenne and I stopped to buy a cigar, and I do smoke cigars every once in a while. I rather enjoy them. And I asked the gal, I'm like, so where does this data go once you scan it? She says, oh, it's an instant check, to make sure that you're actually a citizen. Oh, really? So it's not just the card that says, hey, I was born in, 1978. No. All that information gets stored. So I think I'm going to do need to do an investigation into that. Where does all of that data go, and why do you have to scan it to make sure? I would tell you, the next time you go to, you get carded or whatever, I think I would just tell them, no, you're not going to scan it. You can look at it. You can tell that I'm of age, but you're not going to scan it. And, if they don't want to sell it to you, fine. But don't let your data be out there in control of, some other company. Now, I don't know if you realize this or not, but there's a massive comet that is headed towards the country. And there's a piece in Fox News, and this one, I'm kind of a space nut, but this piece is entitled "Massive Comet Zooming Through the Solar System Could Be Alien Technology," according to a Harvard astrophysicist. And I quote, "A comet traveling outside the solar system and heading towards Earth is much larger than scientists first believed." Avi Loeb claims that the comet could even be an artifact of alien technology rather than a natural body because it weighs more than 33 billion tons and spans 3.1 miles across. The object is named 31 Atlas, and it is only the third interstellar visitor ever detected after an asteroid in 2017. The astrophysicist also revealed in a Medium blog post that new data and measurements indicate that the comet's nucleus is more massive than first estimated. Now, it was first spotted in July, with observations showing that the comet is shedding huge amounts of carbon dioxide and dust as it races towards the sun. Loeb and his colleagues calculated a slight non-gravitational acceleration in its movement caused by outgassing, which suggests the comet may be far heavier than earlier models suggested. Next week, the comet will pass within 1.67 million miles of Mars's orbit, while also coming close to both Jupiter and Venus. Loeb urged NASA to turn on the high-rise camera on the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter towards the object, and said that even a signal bright pixel could fine-tune estimates of its true dimensions. And he's claiming that it could be, alien technology or whatever. And, who knows? There's so much stuff about our universe that none of us really know that it could be, but I sincerely doubt it. If it's shedding gas and dust and debris, it's probably just a comet. Well, my friends, we've burned up another busy broadcast hour on 2 hours on the program. A little bit, we're calling it quits a little bit early today, but make sure that you don't miss a minute of Cowboy State Politics Live. It's broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. until the 10 o'clock hour, around 10 o'clock hour. And it will be in the home studio for a while, simply because my producer is off doing whatever it is that he's doing when he's not producing this show. So from the base of the Bighorns, my friends, from the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. I'll see you tomorrow.